Good morning, everybody. What's up? First in, we got Trail Dust, Transcendental Artist Studios, Stephen Parsons, Shane Lalone, Bill Wheel, John Brunell, Amy Lee, Thomas Goodamoot. I already said Stephen Parsons, didn't I? Yeah, I did. Y'all are just chit-chatting. We got Jeff Killian. And I know that there's several lurkers out there. Say hi, let us know you're here. As Roy had mentioned in the chat, Christ-Centered Ironworks there, he says, I will be running a tad late this morning, but I will be here. I got a feeling he's, grabbing the morning coffee and getting everything ready. He did say he's got some stuff to show us, so I will be offering him plenty of screen time. We're just getting into fish blacksmithing. But yes, so we've got a fun show, but as usual, we'll waste the first 15, 20 minutes with how was your week? Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. Yeah, my week was pretty good. How was your week, Adam? No.
Oh, come on.
No, it's right, I guess. Got 3 days of work for a 50-hour week, and I had to come home on days off because this is the weekend of the month that I'm off, and so have my therapist appointment yesterday, set Friday, not yesterday, and yeah, those are amazing. Everybody should have a therapist. I'm telling you. But yeah, I really didn't do anything. I did make a little bit of progress on my gallery entry for Quad State. It is down to there's probably about 4 hours worth of work left on it, including coding it. And I am down to the point where I can actually not do anything else until I get promises. So it is completely done as far as I can get before final assembly. And let's see what else. Now I'm getting ready here. After the show today, I'm headed up to Dallas for Metallica concert. We're gonna leave here about noon, so I'm gonna go see Metallica and Five Finger Death Punch. I'm super excited about that. Yeah, that's my week. Nothing. Oh yeah, I got a new tattoo. It's on the back of my leg, and I'm not gonna stand up and whip around to try to show you or anything. So I don't know.
I saw that.
You left
What
like an hour ago.
what was it's a chemical it's a collection of isotopes or something?
What's that? Oh, it's a molecule. But in any case, yeah, that's my week. Not much else going on. So
no new addictions about gaming or nothing.
oh, for sakes!
How many hours have we put in together in this game?
Completely forgot about that. Oh my gosh, yes, 7 Days to Die. I have been playing that this like the other day. I got in it. What is it? I got in it. I want to say 10 a.m. and then I had to go back to work at 4, and I played 7 Days to Die till 3, and then I was like, oh well, I guess I better get off here. I got to go take a shower, get ready to go to work, and then the next night we must have been on stream for 6-7 hours, something like that. I mean, it's just nonstop, and it's just so addictive. I mean, yeah, I'm having a good time with it. I really am. More so in the group server than in my solo world, because it's just so much slower. I mean, like I don't have any guns yet or any. Well, I do have a 9mm in that one, but it's you know getting ammo is difficult. So I gotta be careful with it and just use my club as much as possible. So. Yeah, that's it. You can go further into that if you like. Adam, how was your week?
Pretty good. Fairly busy, to be honest. I had a party at my place last night. Had a few friends come around and a few drinks. Yes, I would have invited you, Yamas, but you're a bit. I didn't think you could make it. Been a bit busy.
Yeah.
It would have been first thing Saturday morning for you, and I know you usually got things on. So, but yeah, no. So I spent my week, cleaning up and getting the place ready, but also I went around to help my dad do some weld up some fencing with some for the inside of his garden. They've got put the fleur-de-lis caps on the top and all that type of stuff. And just basically helped out a few friends around the place. Nothing really to do with blacksmithing this week, apart from working on the books. On that note, the complete doing a little bit of research and stuff like that this week, I've seen that there are a lot of companies offering the original Practical Blacksmithing, just basically a copy paste version of the original on Amazon and whatnot for about $45 US. So as a result, I thought it was a bit rude that I was offering mine for 80 odd. Not so much a bit rude, but it wasn't competitive. So as a result, I dropped the price on that. So for everyone watching now on Amazon.com, the complete Practical Blacksmithing annotated in paperback version and on Kindle is now, so the paperback version is now available for $40 US. It's about $90 odd Australian at the moment, simply because it's the exchange rate is kind of ridiculous. But yeah, so that's available if you're interested in buying a classic that has been redone, a little bit more modern English, and makes a little bit more sense.
I will say, I went to look it up 2 days ago because I needed to buy the fourth one in hardcover still, and so and when I looked up Practical Blacksmith Annotated, or Practical Blacksmithing Annotated, the full one is what came up first. I believe it was like $80 and change. What is on Amazon, and then I mean I'm not getting that one. I got because I wanted the 4 individual ones, so I ordered the fourth one in hardcover. So.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'll probably see if I can link a copy in the chat there. So I'll put a link for the actual for in the chat, just so that you can, for those that are interested, can go straight to it. Now the complete version doesn't have a hard copy. I know the original does, but that's because I'm doing it's being published through Amazon, and they won't do a book that large. It is over 700 pages. They won't do a book that large in hardcover. It's just too big. So unfortunately, I'm stuck with paperback for the full version, and I can confirm the price has been dropped. So yeah, I'll drop that in the description for all you lovely people out there to get. So it's now the price is now a lot more competitive compared to what it was.
Right. And on a side note, I'm proud of you for that. Good job. And can't wait to see the finish of your next book.
It's coming. It's coming. Slow. It's slow. It is. One thing I've realized is like annotating, and it still took me a good 6 to 8 months to annotate Practical Blacksmithing, but doing it all from scratch, and doing what I'm doing from scratch is a whole other ball game. It's like comparing cricket to baseball.
Am I allowed to talk about it, or is it still secret?
Yeah, no, go ahead.
It's the poems book, right? Blacksmith poems.
No, so I am doing a Blacksmith poems, but no, that is a book I'm currently doing, but it's not the next book. I'm still working on the poems book. The poems book, it will be for the lovely Jessica Adams, and it will be on Amazon. It will be available on Amazon, but I won't really announce that's available until I get a copy out to Roy and Jess, so that they kind of had the first copies.
Right.
But no, the next actual blacksmithing book will be called A Practical Blacksmith Companion. Basically, it's kind of a sequel to Practical Blacksmithing, but it's also it's going to be full of all new information. It's going to have a lot more projects in it. So stuff for blacksmiths to actually attempt some plans. It's also going to go a bit more into some of the fundamentals. So some of the things you can use for anvils, how to build or design a forge for your space. Stuff on beginners forges like of course, everyone knows that I'm a very, very, very big supporter of the Just a Box of Dirt forge or JBOD forge. So I'm gonna have a little bit of information about that in there as well. A bit of information about fuel, so a bit of information about bituminous coal, anthracite, also charcoal, and making your own charcoal in case you're in a place that doesn't have access, like I am, doesn't have access to coal. So it's going to have things all about that. So it's basically going to be, you can take this book, and like I said, I'm trying to put a lot of effort into it to really. I know it's going to be criticized. I know it's going to be reviewed, and I know it's going to be scrutinized. And I'm trying to put as much effort into this, so it stands the test of time, like Practical Blacksmithing, like this one by a friend, Francis Whitaker. The it's red. It's not showing up. So like the Blacksmith's cookbook. Yep. And I've got the complete bladesmith and stuff like that. Some of these books have stood the test of time. None so much as Practical Blacksmithing, of course. But so I want this book to not only be used by smiths, but inspire smiths for the next 100 years. That's what I'm really looking at. And of course, my research has delved right back to, as early as I can get. Some of my sources are from the 1700s, so books and articles and stuff like that from smiths that were working in the times where blacksmithing was still essential, and that's right up until the 1940s odd. So, this is information, not only practical experience of my own, but information I've got from what were living and breathing and practicing experts in the craft that we love, basically straight to you. So, and that's from all over the world. That's information from the UK, information from Australia, information from America, from India. There'll be some information so there's going to be parts of that come from all over the world. This is, of course, this is a craft that the modern world was built on the back of. So there's no one expert in everything. I've even got, I will even have a section on art, which goes into artistic blacksmithing and does cover a little bit of Baroque ironwork as well. So there will be a section on acanthus sleeves and scrolls and stuff like that, because these things are essential to the craft that we love today. When as a blacksmith, we're no longer the essential craft that it used to be. We're now more artisans. So I've got a lot more of that artisanal stuff in there as well, and that'll include making candelabras and all that type of stuff. I have plans for all that type of stuff for you guys to actually use and enjoy as well. So yeah, really, that's what I'm aiming for, and it's the reason why it's taking such a long time, because I want it to be able to stand the test of time for you all, for everyone in the community to really be able to sink their teeth into this book and get as much out of it as possible. You're never going to have the one definitive work on any particular craft, but I want this to be able to be a reference book for not only us and now, but generations to come. And that's why it's, I'm really working hard to get the best quality I can into that book. And I'm literally like this. I'm going to turn off the background for a second so you guys can actually see what I'm talking about. As soon as I figure out how to freaking do it. So I'm going to turn off the background for a second. And where the hell did that just go? There we go. Okay. Turn off the background for a second. And nope, it's not letting me. It's doing. There we go. Okay.
There we go. Yeah.
So there we go. Now I've got no background. So this is an example of my notes, and this is just my handwritten notes that I have. That's not including the notes and stuff I have on my computer. I currently have something like 6,000 files and documents on my computer that I'm currently going through, sorting out into the different categories. And that's not including my notebook that I have in my bag that I take to work. So while I'm at work and I've got a little bit of quiet time, I'm still researching, still taking notes down, getting references and all like that. So like I said, 6,000 files plus that pile, plus the notebook that I'm about halfway through. It's a 600-page notebook that I'm about halfway through at the moment. That I'm currently sorting through and trying to get the best bits and leave out the repetitiveness and all that type of stuff, just so that this is going to be top quality. I'm already starting to think I might have to split this into 2 volumes. That's how much information I have, and by 2 volumes I mean 2 700-page volumes, so that I can put them in hardcover as well. Like, I have a massive amount of information, just jaw-dropping amount. So I didn't think this project was going to be this big when I started it. It was like, whoa, and it's just snowballed and it's gotten massive. So yeah. Anyway, that's the update on that.
That's your week in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's my life in a nutshell at the moment. But
Yes.
it's basically all book focused. So yeah.
Well, so I guess it's my turn. And yeah, so I hate to say, we probably will go a little bit longer today. Not much, because I know Alexis has places to be. But yeah, Royce, again, I'd like to repeat for everybody waiting on Roy, because it's like we know that's the reason you guys are here. Roy said that he was running a little bit late and will be here. So the title is still truthful. Anyway, my week.
He'll check in at 9:50 or 10:50.
Right. My week has been, I had a slow work week. I had 2 jobs that I just really had to get finished, but like waiting on certain things for this. I did get one fully ready, so it was like 4 half days, and then my boss. No, Thursday was a full day, and then my boss would not let me work on Friday, much to my chagrin, whatever. Because chagrin. Because Friday was my birthday, and they didn't want me stuck at work all day. It was the first birthday in my life that I have had off work, and it was pretty fantastically amazing. We did a crab boil, seafood boil, and then Saturday we did steaks, and it was just all sorts of fun. I just saw a Roy peak. Yeah, so last week I had John Burnell in my shop showing us how to actually do some forging, and that was a lot of fun. And this week, I may or may not get out there. I don't think I'm going to be out there tonight. I did tell everybody before that I was taking the summer off from doing my evening show, so we'll see. All right, we will see. And as Alexis had pointed out earlier, we were having a blast playing 7 Days to Die. If any of you guys are interested in watching some of the footage from that, here is my little brother's channel on Twitch, where he puts all of the footage and where we stream when we play as a group. And it's just generally a fun time. I know Mr. Stephen Parsons was asking for the link earlier. So with that, Roy, howdy,
ready?
You're muted. How was your week?
About like expected.
About like expected.
About like this morning.
Yeah.
Busy as always. So, but it was a good week.
Yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time out of that busy week to pop in here and well, be here with us.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me.
So, yeah. So today's topic is, as said, part 2 of discussing Baroque ironwork, Baroque, Rococo, French Baroque ironwork, with Christ-centered Ironworks. Which, by the way, congratulations on hitting over 500,000 subscribers. You got 600,000 and some change.
Yay! That's
So
why I'm wearing a suit jacket, you know, because now he's cracked out. You know, he's on the downhill run to 1 million subscribers. We've got to start treating him a little bit more fancy, you know.
I you know, it's all Thomas, right?
Yeah, it's all Thomas.
100,000 profiles.
Don't tell him that. He'll start wanting royalties.
Yeah. So
but yeah, no, thanks for the congrats. So yeah, it's pretty crazy. We're on the march to a mill, which is insane. Never thought that would happen.
Right.
But yeah, I remember, and I mean, I know we discussed a lot of this last week, but yeah, I remember when you were just a huge channel to me when I first started. It was sitting at 20,000-30,000 subscribers. And it's like, how do you get that many?
Yep.
So, yeah, congratulations.
One crazy person at a time. That's how you get there. One crazy person at a time that has too much time on their hands.
And that's how you end up knowing people like us.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. How's my audio coming in? Is it coming in good? Everything coming in good?
Good point for the audio check. Let me hear you do a little mini rant so that I can check your audios. Tell us how you feel about coal.
Oh Lord. It's black. It's really black.
All right, I'm going to bump you down 2 notches. Okay. All right, I think I got you. So, and the reason the audio is super important, not only for the YouTubers watching, but also this is recorded as a podcast and posted out as we can get as Alexis can get it all edited and released on Anchor, Spotify, etc. Google. So people can listen to this.
3 episodes. I got 3 episodes edited and in the can, and I just keep forgetting to drop them into the podcast. So I got to get that done today.
They're distracting you with zombie games.
Right. Yeah. Well, no. I mean, I'm caught up editing wise. I've even edited last week, but it's just hasn't. It's all in the can. It's ready to go. I just gotta finish the process. So
right on. So to the topic. Last week we had a brief kind of intro to your views on Rococo, French Baroque, and Baroque, and we were discussing the differences and similarities and what got you started into French Baroque ironwork. If you could give us a quick recap for those popping in and listening who weren't here last week, on just a brief synopsis of what got you into Baroque ironwork.
Yeah, so what got me into Baroque ironwork, and specifically French Baroque ironwork, which the French were doing during the Baroque period, is that I personally believe that form of ironwork is the pinnacle that can be achieved in the forging of forms. And the reason for that belief is because of the over attention to intricacy of the actual ironwork itself. In the world where we live now, we live in a very plain, sterile environment with straight lines. Everything has to be a straight line, flat as a board, clean lines. We don't like a lot of texture, although there is some movement back to that. In Baroque ironwork, in the Rococo periods and Baroque periods, and especially with French Baroque ironwork, it's a complete deviation from form. And it's just like, if we could put a leaf there, we'll put a leaf there. If we could put a scroll there, we'll put a scroll there. You know what? Hey, how about a little face? Let's put a face there, right? Oh, you know what? I think that needs a gargoyle or two. Let's just throw a gargoyle or two in there, And that kind of hot mess of ironwork has always been really intriguing to me. And that's one of the things that initially drew me to it. And I have done a lot of different types of ironwork over the years that I've been doing this. I've done forged fab. I've done more of the traditional, more colonial style of ironwork. I've kind of bounced around here and there. And I think I have settled onto the thing that I want to be doing for the next 30 years, which is exploring, these leaf forms and, these the Baroque and Rococo period. Because in my own personal opinion, like I said, I think that was the pinnacle of our craft.
Right. That's I was trying to put it into words in the pre-show so that we could catch Speargrass up.
Yeah.
Do you personally find it more challenging?
Yeah, very challenging, actually, because with Baroque ironwork, it is very much a mind puzzle, if you will, right? So even like behind Adam there, if you look at that gate behind Adam on the green screen, that's a perfect example. So not only does the form have to work, right? The function, the actual functional portion has to work as far as a gate or a headboard or a dresser or whatever it may be, right? A window grill. Not only does the function have to be correct, but then you can start experimenting with the forms on it. And all of that is done in layers. And what you can't see from that kind of great a distance is all the various techniques that had to be implemented just for the assembly work, let alone the forging work, all the tools and highly specialized tooling and everything that it took to orchestrate those processes to bring that type of project, especially on that scale, to completion. And that's not even talking about gilders, because that was a totally separate field of industry, the people who are doing all the gilding work. And there's a whole subset of tools around that. I've done some limited gilding work, and it's tough. That is tough. You think you're just putting a little glue on and slapping some gold down. It is tough to do some gilding work. It takes a very steady hand and a lot of patience. So, a lot of that work building up on those computational forgings, it's very much like a big mind puzzle. And for me, that really intrigues me. I like big mind puzzles like that, versus something that be more subdued or simpler in form. So.
Well, see, there's a specific reason I chose this exact background there, Roy, because if my memory serves me correctly, this is actually not only named designed by your favorite French Baroque blacksmith designer.
Oh yeah.
this is actually what you're looking at behind me is actually called the Tshirts grill from Hampton Court Palace in the UK. So this was named after him, and of course it's his design. So
yeah, you're correct on that. That's Jean Tijoux' work. I can see it now from there. It's a little small. I got to get really close. Yeah, okay. It's a little small on my end. Right now, it just kind of looks like a golden glob. But so, yeah. So as far as the difficulty of the work, the difficulty in any work exists in the complexity of that work, right? You can either go to the complexity side of things, or you can go to the large and hard to manage side of the things, right? Like, so say forging a large ship anchor, that would be difficult, right? That would be difficult, and to forge a 40-ton ship anchor, right? That's arguably could be very difficult as well. So difficulty rating goes up the more complexity that you add. And for me, the Baroque ironwork is just one step shy of clockmaker work. Which clockmaking would be fine machining and a lot of file work, a lot of micro scale work. But they did have forging in the earlier clocks, way back in the day. But as things got better, they needed to make better time. So a simple filed tooth wasn't going to cut it anymore on a gear.
Right.
They need to figure out something that could keep time a little bit better. But next to that would be, in my opinion, Baroque ironwork, and also Baroque, Rococo, and the Gothic period of ironwork. Those are all where they used heavy layers and a lot of complex tooling to achieve their work. So it's a big mind puzzle. It's a big mind puzzle. So definitely difficult.
So one thing I've always wondered there, Roy, is of course, I was talking about it just before in the book that's coming. I'm going to have a little bit of section on Baroque and Rococo and stuff like that. And also in preparation for this month, I've done a little bit of research in it, and we had a bit of a kind of an intro to it the other week before you joined us last week. And of course, there's basically two main types of Baroque. There's Baroque, like general Baroque, which is Italian, German, and then you've got specifically French Baroque. So what in, like, we know you love French Baroque. It's something that you espouse on about all the time. What drew you specifically to French Baroque as opposed to Baroque in general, particularly as it being Italian and being attached to, the church and stuff like that? What specifically drew you to French Baroque?
I would say it's the over the top nature of it. So the French are classic for being very flamboyant in their ironwork and artistic pursuits. If anybody wants to find out more about that, just type in French Baroque or Baroque paintings or things like that. And anything that came from France is very over the top. And almost to the point, as we had a conversation last week, to the point of being too much busy, right? Almost gaudy in nature. And that kind of complexity just totally messed with my mind. Like, how do you even, where do you begin? Do you have to have it all figured out from the beginning? How would you even go about building something like that? So when I very first started in blacksmithing, something as simple as making a fire poker, I could kind of, like most people might walk up to you at a craft fair, like, oh yeah, well, yeah, you just kind of do a little loop-de-doo on the end, and you put a little twisty thing in the center, and then you make, I don't know how you made the pointy thing on the end, but you put the point thing on the end. Yeah, you got a fire poker. We can understand that. Versus French Baroque ironwork, it's kind of like, now wait a second. How did he attach that leaf, in a stack of scrolls where there's 50 scrolls in that same place? Or how the hell did he put that face in the center of that head of cabbage? And you go and you walk around, you look around, you're not seeing rivets, you're not seeing, unless you get really up on it, it kind of strikes you as that. And so I guess that's where that's where the appeal on the French side of it goes to, versus regular, more subdued work of the other, nations of the time of the world that were in the Baroque period is just that over the top. I guess it originated from what my historical understanding is. That Baroque period kind of got started in France, but it was really very certainly taken over the top in France with that kind of, they fully embrace that. So so that's just my general interest there.
All right.
Fair.
So last week we had mentioned that this week, and this is why you're actually in your shop, because some people are wondering, why am I showing a full screen of your shop instead of a full screen of the examples in the other hosts in Alexis's and Adam's backdrops. last week we discussed that we wanted to show some techniques, or you had some pieces to show off, and I found the screen retail space to allow you to do that.
Okay, awesome. So you'll have to you all will have to verbally let me know. I can't see on the other end on the chat on YouTube right now. You'll have to let me know how well everything's being shown off,
Yeah. Well, you pretty much got
just chime in if it's not showing off good enough.
80% of the screen is what you got right now.
Okay, cool. Oh. So yeah, I guess one of the first things I'll show off, I'll actually have to go over and grab some of my storyboards. This is something that during this process that I'm working on currently in this exploration into French Baroque ironwork, I am going through the process of storyboarding everything as I go. And so this way I can have examples of my journey, not only up on the shop walls, because they have a lot of real estate, I have a lot of vertical real estate, it'll look neat, but also so this way I can teach what I know about it to future generations as we go along. So I'm going to go ahead and grab one of my storyboards real quick, and then we'll go over some of the tooling.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep getting hurricane warnings.
Move to the north, and all you get is blizzard warnings.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah. So here's one storyboard that I've knocked up of similar leaf work.
Wow.
This would very much be like in French styling, but hopefully everybody can see this okay without the camera.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Perfect placement.
Okay. So at the very top of this, we have basically just a regular old blank. Now, a lot of the leaf work that you would see traditionally would have been cut out. Obviously, they didn't have plasma cutters, right? So they would have had to cut this type of work out out of thin material or thin wrought iron. Some of it would have been heavily forged, say, or what would have been considered heavy forging for them, out of a larger bar of material and kind of the preform made on the end, and then it chiseled out. And there's certainly a lot of forms in Baroque ironwork that are done that way, but a lot of the applique methods that you see, like on the gate there of Tiju behind Adam, a lot of that is applique scroll work. So that was done out of sheets of iron, and it was chiseled out and then filed. So it was not only chiseled, but then hand filed to final form. And so I've just shortcutted the process here with some plasma cut work to get me to that, to save me on the low skilled jobs, right? Because I don't have 40 little helpers in the shop, right? That can make this possible for me. Exactly. Yeah. So I don't have that in my shop, and most blacksmiths, well, I don't know of any that have 40 people working for them nowadays. So you take a form like this, and this shows you some of this computation or some of the complexity work that adds to this. You take a simple form like this, and you have to think about your work, how it's going to flow with the rest of the piece. In this particular piece, I've done a lot of surface detail to it. Can you guys see that texture there? A lot of the fuller work, So each one of those are hand fullered in. Each one of those lines are fullered in. And I've done that by dividing up the space. So if you pick a center theme, like from here down, I picked the center line. And then I fullered one line into that theme. Then I divided that space in half again. So I looked for the halfway point, and I fullered a line. And so on and so forth. I kept divvying this up into halfway spaces to take and create this flow like you see it here. And if you'll also notice, not all of this has been fullered. This here has been left blank. So is this upper portion. That has been fullered on the opposite side because I knew which way in advance of how I was going to curl this thing up. So we only fuller out the show sides of the ironwork, right? The parts that matter. We do this to save time. It's an efficiency step, but not only is it an efficiency step, but it's also, you're never going to see the fullers on the other side. Plus, where two fuller lines meet is a very thin area that could end up cracking.
Right.
Especially if you're working with ironwork. Especially if you're working with wrought iron sheet, you would always be keeping that in the back of your mind about cracking. So this is just one example. This is what this leaf form is for. This is an applique scroll. So this would have been affixed to the front of scroll work. So scrolls that are behind doing whatever they do, this would be attached to the front of it. Now that would have been attached by rivet work or pinning or fire welding, or it might even be tucked underneath the collar, just tucked under, because they hot fit collars. So it might just be tucked under a collar and just sitting there. So that's one type of form of ironwork. I can open that up to any questions or commentary from my co-host there before we move on to the next one.
Well, just out of curiosity, I assume you cut all three of those out and worked them for the explicit purpose of that storyboard, correct?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay, so on the one that is fullered but still flat, did you actually fuller the backside of that one because it's glued up or stuck to the board?
Yep, I sure did. I was actually making quite a few of these. I was making up a bunch, and I was kind of exploring different options. That one was one that I didn't like how the fuller marks came out on the back end, so I decided not to roll that one up into a full, into a full piece. So it became a storyboard item.
Right on.
Yep.
One thing I wanted to say as well is you saying you kind of cheated by cutting it out with a plasma cutter. Is I personally don't believe that, because knowing what I do now about blacksmithing and blacksmithing history, the fact that blacksmiths created the oxyacetylene and the electric welder and like all these sorts of tools, that if those guys back in the French Baroque period had access to something like a plasma cutter, you bet your blue behind that they would have been using it. Absolutely. Because it would have been, it would have streamlined their process so much better. And you probably find they would have put more acantha leaves,
right,
than everything available.
Yeah, you see how bare and empty the sides of that little gate of Tiju's work look? There'd be a lot more gold and leaves on there if they had a plasma cutter.
Yeah, and ridiculous sizes too. They would have done palm leaves and all sorts of things if they could have.
Yep, definitely. Especially if they had access to rolled sheet.
Yeah,
of uniform thickness, right? To be able to do so.
Yep.
I think oftentimes, great point on that. Oftentimes we forget that we do blacksmithing as a pure luxury. So we can speculate all day long. We can make up all sorts of things about tradition, what's traditional, what's not, what's right, what's wrong about it. Those blokes back in the day, they were working a day job, buddy. It was just as much of a day job to them. I'm sure there was some that loved it, but there was a whole bunch out there that didn't love it. They were doing it, man, just to pay the bill, to keep the landlord off their backs, right? That was it. And in fact, a mentor and friend of mine, Raymond Sim, he was one of those. He started in his daddy's shop, blacksmith shop, sharpening plowshares. And he started that at about 9 years old in his dad's blacksmith shop, and then later on moved into welding. But he didn't love it per se, right? Like he didn't love it. He just did it to keep the farm, right? Like that was his, keep the business running.
And that is a very common, very, very common story along, like in all the research I've done, particularly sharpening plowshares, questions about how to more efficiently sharpen plowshares and, how to quickly sharpen plowshares, or the quick and rough jobs, because it's kind of like this is the money. This is the thing that comes in and pays the bills most, that and shoeing horses and retiring wagons, or resetting axles. They were the money makers. So it was kind of like, how can we do this a bit better and a bit quicker? Because we get it out so we can do the stuff we actually want to do.
Yeah. They're like, no. It has to be traditionally done. No, they weren't saying that. That wasn't a word that was uttered up until recent history. So, but I mean, I imagine, who knows? Maybe somebody was like that back in the day, but they were probably not the guy hand chiseling leaves out by hand all day.
Right.
So yeah. So good.
Next storyboard. Go.
Next storyboard.
I was just gonna say real quick to the people in the chat and any listening, I have upped the bitrate of the stream because I do seem to be having a slight pulsing bandwidth issue. It isn't dropping it completely like it has in the past, but it's going from 5,000 bit rate down to 20,000 bit or 2,000 bit rate, and kind of fluctuating. So for those of you in the chat talking about the quality of the stream, that may be what it is. I have upped it to accommodate it. All right, back to the show.
Okay. So that was one. So that's one form. Obviously, this is one form of scroll. Of leaf work that you can put on your scroll work. That's an applique type scroll, something that would have been done to the surface, and so therefore it has a lot of surface work, surface finish done to it. This next type, however, is something that you would include in the scroll work. So this would be a part of the scrolling elements themselves. This would have been, maybe fire welded onto a piece, and then that piece fire welded onto a much longer bar and scrolled up into the bar itself. But this type of scroll takes a little different approach. Now, this type of scroll would use something like French stake repoussé or repousse work. We call it repoussé, but I believe the correct terminology that I was corrected on by Douglas Pryor is it's called repousse, not repoussé, but it's repousse work. And so hopefully everybody can see the details on that okay.
Yes.
So as you can see, we start with a flat form again, just like in the other. But this one you can see has a lot deeper valleys in it, and it has a lot more character. Let's just call it character, right? There's a lot more detail. You can see there's a center vein element to it, and then there are the lobes and there's pipes according with the acanthus leaf there. But this is something that you would have installed with your scroll work, or for this particular project. This is part of my masterwork grill that I am working on. The masterwork grill has a twisted post, an outer twisted post frame to it that will have acanthus leaves climbing it. So I was working on a climbing acanthus leaf for that. So that's what this turned into. But this could easily be just kept in the flat form and shaped however you'd like, in kind of a snaky like shape there that you may see in a lot of Baroque ironwork there. So those are just some real quick two different types of scroll forms. Let's see here. I'll show you one more like that would be in line.
Mm-hmm.
So if I come back over, so you can see here's another take of the same thing, a little different. And again, it would depend how much detail you put into this would be how much wealth your client has, right? So you'll see a varying degree of elaborateness. Not only the forms might be complex, but some of the work can be pretty plain. This, however, is a fairly plain acanthus leaf. It's a pretty plain acanthus leaf, not a whole lot going on with it. Again, starts with the basic form, has the surface elements added to it, and then it's scrolled up into final shape. Hopefully you want to see how that looks there.
And those fit onto the scroll, like the radius of the scrolls.
Yes, that's correct. So these would actually go onto the radius of the scrolls. And I can show you an example of that, walk away again. Excuse me for
it's all
doing
good.
so much walking away. Like I said, I am behind where I want to be. So here's a good example of that. How that would have been attached to scroll work.
Okay.
Can we see that there?
Yeah, we can see it. It's forge welded there onto the onto the base of the scroll where it starts, so that it follows that radius. Yeah. Now, I have a question. You make the rolls and everything, or the leaves first, and then attach them to the scrolls. Do you then reheat the leaves and get them to follow the radius a bit?
Yeah, so it depends on how thick the iron is, or the steel in this case. If it's really thick, you have to heat it to move it. But generally, this work would have been done cold. The final fit-up work and getting it to the final form, they would have got it as close as possible hot, or to where it could be fitting. And they might have a sample scroll, let's say, right, that they're fitting stuff around. They would get it close, and then they would do that hot, and then they would do any sort of tinkering work or tweaking work cold. Because if anybody's ever worked with scrolls before, or if you have forged scrolls before, you all know it's pretty difficult to keep those scrolls nicely looking, right? Like if you start whacking on a scroll that's been formed, it bends up it kinks or it straightens out somewhere, right? And it might develop a twist in it, stuff like that. If you do a lot of hammer work on it after it's been formed, if you do any hammer work on it hot, so reheating up the scroll, you take a risk and a chance of doing that. And if you're already in a complex form where everything's where it needs to be, right? If everything's exactly the way it needs to be, the last thing you want to do is be wailing on this, right? To get this to move or do whatever you want. So they would use a preform, get the scroll mostly to where they want it, and then the final work is all done cold. In fact, I'm not going to do it to this one, but I can still bend this.
Okay.
You see that?
Yeah.
See the movement?
Okay.
So I can still move that around cold. So that would have been the safer bet to do.
Bill Wheel asks, how do you keep the leaf hot enough to weld? Is it a forge weld to get it on? And how do you keep it all hot to forge weld that, if it is? So those particular scrolls there, those were done with an applique method. Those scrolls there were actually, I hand cut, I filed a groove, a notch that the thin tips that I thin down on those acanthus leaves actually fit in. So it creates a smooth appearance on the outside, so you don't have a scroll and then a bump up to the acanthus leaf, right? And they were pinned on, they were riveted on, and then filed flush. Okay.
So those there were done that way. Now, some of the leaf work that you'll see in Baroque work, and I bet you even has some, if I remember correctly, on that Tshirts gate behind Adam there. There are some of those leaves that are not connected by rivet or pin work or fire welding or anything like that. They are just stuffed behind a collar and held there in place by friction.
Okay.
So there is work like that is done. Again, quickest method possible, right, for attachment without having to go and repeat a bunch of hours, right, of work. So if you're talking about fire welded scrolls that you would be doing, or forge welding scrolls with acanthus sleeves, you have to leave enough mass on the end. So you might take and fold it back or faggot weld up some mass on the end of your sheet. So it would start with a longer tab that would get faggot welded back and then forged, and then that way you'd have enough mass that you could weld that onto your piece. But most of that stuff, most of that leaf work, you have to think they were working with wrought iron. But say that inner portion of the scroll, well, instead of me just doing hands, say if you were wanting to weld this leaf to this scroll, this section here would be by itself. this would be one section, right? So this scroll might actually be sticking out like this, not quite scrolled yet. And you would lay the leaf on top of the bar. You would make a forge weld. That would get scarfed, and it would get forge welded onto the rest of this piece. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes.
So you wouldn't be managing this whole piece.
Right.
So this would all be laid out in the flat. This would get welded on as a separate piece. It would be lap welded onto the longer bar that would become the scroll. And then the scroll would be scrolled up afterwards. And then the final shape took them.
Wow.
That. So that's
okay,
so that's how you would do it to keep the leaf from burning up, because we don't you don't need really large fires. In fact, to do that kind of work, you really just need to take and get that end hot. You need to get a nice localized heat, and they were burning charcoal and they were burning coal to take and do that.
Right. So, yeah, I am trying to take some questions from the viewers as well as the co-hosts. If I see Alexis has moved to the donut box.
Well, I've been in the donut carton, but I'll see now. This my headphones they just went static, and I couldn't figure out where it was coming from. So I had to nix get off the PC and jump over to my phone, and one set of earbuds wasn't working right. Had to toss them, get a second pair. It's just been I had technical difficulties, and I've been in the donut carton all morning. It's just now I'm on the phone, so I don't have a cool background anymore.
All right.
But luckily, I have two phones, so I can keep track of the chat while I'm doing this. So
fantastic.
Yeah.
So
to support what Roy was saying, particularly with the screen that's behind me, the Tshirts screen, right? So a lot of with this particular work, basically every technique that Roy has described about attaching leaves and stuff like that has been used. There are some that are just tucked into collars. There are some that are forge welded on. There are some that are pinned or riveted on. And the reason why we know this is because a lot of these ironworks, like they're nearly 200 years old now. And of course they still have to go through maintenance. So there are a select amount of smiths in the UK that how to do this. And of course, they have access to all the designs from Tshirts that are held by the Royal Palace Societies. And so they have all the original plans and the layout. So, what Roy was saying about, him planning out what was going to be done, that's all pre-planned because they have to, because of the simple complexity. And, so these things still have to be remade, and that's not just these outside pieces, that's the railings and balustrades, because Tshirts just designed all of the ironwork for particularly Hampton Court Palace. So that's just the inside balustrades for the stairs and the railings, and some of the support structures for the balconies and stuff like that, some of the brackets and whatnot. So these pieces have to be replaced sometimes, and so the new smith had to go out and figure out how they attach them and then recreate all that type of thing as well. So I think the most interesting one is particularly the flowers that are in the scrolls, in the front of the scrolls, because it's like figuring out how those are attached without pulling them off first. That would be the most interesting. I personally think they would be riveted, particularly to give the center of the flower, and that would kind of fill out the rivet, the fill out the rivet would fill out the center. But yeah, like even doing that. So what Roy said last week about doing leaves, lots of leaves, really gets you into doing particularly French Baroque and then the other Baroques as well, because they're all leaf heavy as well, and also with Rococo. So yeah, so it's very interesting. But what's your take on the masks and stuff there, Roy? Like, are you particularly with your masterpiece? Are you planning on doing any masks, or what's your take on the masks?
So my take on the masks, so those would be called grotesques. In Baroque ironwork, they're called grotesques. Yep. Anywhere that you see a face, whether it be a little cherub face in the center of a cabbage, or you see a gargoyle. Those are called grotesque. Anything with a face, basically, is considered a grotesque. From the research that I've done, again, I have not visited these places personally, in person, been able to take a look at the. I would love to. So if anybody's out there from the, fancy pants British area, France area, that, wants to sponsor, reach out, get in touch.
We need more experts in Baroque ironwork.
Hey, it's the plane ticket's not that bad. Maybe only $1,500, but you could swim for free.
Yeah.
Yeah. I swim straight to bottom, though. That's the problem.
Come on down to the ocean. I'll teach you how to swim.
Yeah. So my take on the faces, I actually covered this a little bit. There's a great documentary put out by the BBC. I covered this in the last episode there. There's this great, I think it's called, put out by like Mastercraft. It's like the Blacksmith's Tale, I think this was what it's called, but put out by the BBC. And they have like a 4-part series. And in one of those parts, they had some sort of atrium, is the best way I could describe it. They had an atrium, and the atrium actually had a grotesque, had a mask on it that was part of the decorative elements. And part of the story behind it that was told is that the smith didn't really get paid well for making this atrium. And so he took he kind of took that out. They believe the mask was done in a cartoonish looking form that deviated from the skills that the smith could actually do. So they made the mask a caricature, I guess, of the wealthy duke or lord that wasn't paying very well, and they added it to the ironwork. And so they were supposing that some of the mask work may have had to do with that. Obviously, certainly in other ironwork, they tell a story, right? You might have, having the human form was a very large portion of Baroque ironwork, especially if you ever look at any of the, if you look at any of the castles or you look at the painted ceilings, right, frescoes, you see all of these. You see a ton of human forms, cherubs and nymphs and all sorts of mystical and magical creatures. So I think they included a lot of that in the ironwork as well to take and tell a story. You'll see a lot of griffins and gargoyles and things like that show up.
Side note, I will say,
I like them. They're very hard to make, by the way. I've only made like 2 grotesques by Rapus work, and it's it's difficult to get some of the features right. Like, I can try my hardest, and I'll get to being that character version of a face.
I will say this side note from the chat. Big Dog Forge popped in and said hi to you, Roy. And
hey, Big Dog.
And John Burnell said that he'll push you into the water to get your trip started.
Well,
something about
that's expected.
Something about cooling off that head of yours or something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
I said you don't swim well because too much iron in you. But
and while you're having that little bit of a chat about there, Roy, I actually went and did a quick look, and the series is called Metalworks, the Blacksmith's Tale, and it is about unfortunately looks like it's been removed from BBC. However, it is available on YouTube if you just search that up. It's on YouTube. It's a 4-part series, and by BBC, I think it was a 3-part. But yeah, and I think I've actually seen. I actually watched the last. The third episode where it actually talked about they were looking at a gazebo that was a lot of vine work, and it was very, very exquisite. It was in a garden in the UK or in a palace garden or something like that, and it was absolutely gorgeous, just in its use of not only the vines, but it was more rococo in the sense of its use of the vines, but also the space to kind of give it that artistic view. And some people, I'm not sure. It's like looking at looking at an old magic eye picture where, if you look at the spaces, sometimes you see the woman, or or the face, or there, and that's how this one was kind of built. It was very trippy, and another one of those where you have to really look at the plans and think, how did they do that with that? Like the thought that went into it was.
Yep. Yeah.
So have you got anything else to show us?
Yeah, well, I mean, I have tooling. I mean, of course, I could go on and on and on and on, but I was going to show a little bit of French steak repoussé tooling, and maybe even do a small, tiny little demonstration on it, just to show you one of the basic things, which is creating a line in a piece of, a piece of copper, a little sheet copper that I've got here. If
Works
anybody's
for me.
interested in me doing that real quick.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I'm up for that.
Sounds like a plan.
So,
would be a fantastic ending. Fantastic ending to a great birthday weekend.
Yeah.
Whose birthday is it?
Yours, Thomas?
Yeah, my birthday was Friday. I had a badass Friday, a badass Saturday, and now I'm having a badass Sunday. So
right on. Well, happy birthday.
Well, thank you. So let's see what you got.
Okay. Well, so is there interest in that, or I mean, I don't know what the time is.
We can go a little bit long. We can go long. It's fine.
Okay. I know I was late today to things, so I'm going to show off some tooling first, and I hope you guys can kind of start seeing why it is that I love Baroque ironwork. That's just some of the tooling in the shop in the pursuit of that of that type of work. But this is so. Let's say you're working for a wealthy duke, a lord, a king, whatever you're doing back in the day. You would have started off with a designer that would have designed the work. The designers would have, said, "Hey, we're thinking something like this." The king would say, "Nah, I don't like that. Do something different with that piece there." And they would go back to the drawing board. They'd draw something else. And they're like, "No, I want some other little flourishment here. No, I want that to be better closed up, or whatever." And then once they finalized on the design, then it would go through let's call it the engineering department, or which in those days would have been the drafting department. And then they would have started drafting up the things that Adam was talking about. That you said it was the Royal Institute, Royal Society Institute that has all the drawings, and
it's Royal Palace Societies.
Royal Palace Societies, right? So the reason why they have drawings like they do, engineered prints, if you would, of the various cross sections of what was going on, is because they needed to make up an idea of where they were going, right? So they needed to get this passed by the bar. They wouldn't want the gate to fall over. Let's say if it's meant to keep people out, well, you won't want somebody to be able to come along and just kind of push it right on over, right? So it would go through the drafting department. They would draft up plans and make up all sorts of stuff that would get approved by the king, duke, lord, or whoever was involved. And then it would go down to the master craftsman. Now, if they've already started and they've been in business for a very long time, which most of them were for generations and generations, they probably already had most of the tooling and the specialized tooling needed to do a lot of the work, especially the leaf work, things like that. So after all that's said and done, then you can start designing your tools, and your tools get designed around producing the forms as efficiently as possible, right? You want to take and make your process as efficient as possible, like we talked about earlier. So one of the things they would do is, French steak repoussé. So I've got some different ball steaks here. This has a simple notch to be captured in the jaws of a vise so it doesn't slip down. And it's a double end working tool. This one has a ball on this end, a larger ball, and a smaller ball on this end. Lobes. There's curved tools, curved fullerage stakes with different radii on them. There's a fatter radius, slightly thinner radius there. There are straight fuller stakes as well.
That's really cool.
With fat and thin. mushroom stakes for planishing work. Basically just a flat in mushroom, again, with the little notch in the center. This is something, I'm not quite sure where I saw it. It was just kind of like a brief thing. I was scrolling, and one of the master smiths I follow had put a notch in their work to hold their tool. It wasn't a stake tool, to hold their tool from slipping down on them. I think it was a rivet set that they were doing, and if I can remember if I can remember who it was, but I was just kind of power scrolling socials one day, and that's where that came about, to hold it in the vise. But then obviously you got stuff that goes all the way down, thinner tooling. Now for me personally, I didn't know what type of work that I was going to pursue, or how much tooling I was going to need. So I just made a width of each. Right. So when I started making the tooling, fullers and whatnot, I just, if I made one with a 1/2 inch radius, I made one with 3/8, made with quarter, made with 1/8, right? If I made curved butchers or other stake tools, I made those in various sizes as well, because I figured, why the heck not? When I get into a project, I'll have them if I need them.
Ben would like
a very simple thing of raising a vein. Go ahead.
Ben would like to know, he asks in the chat, are those tool steel or mild steel?
These are tool steel. These are a 5160, I believe.
Okay.
Tool steel. They are not hardened.
Okay.
They are not a hardened tool. They don't need to be. They're tough enough as it is for the type of work that I'm doing on them.
And old springs old coil springs would work for that, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what they were. Coil springs. Yeah. Coil springs. Some of it was the actual 5160. Some of the larger size stuff was 5160, like this larger mushroom / ball stake. That was actual real piece of 5160. I say real as in I actually know for sure what it was, versus the other. I say 5160 or coil spring on the other stuff. But I've got this little copper leaf, little fleur-de-lis as an example here. I'm going to move you guys real close. Sorry, hopefully nobody upchucks.
Nope, you're fine.
Move you down to where you guys can see that. Can you see all that okay?
Love it.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I'm going to be using this hammer. It's got 2 faces on it. It's got a cross peen and a straight peen built into one hammer there. And I'm going to do, basically, I'm going to run a vein as close as I can down the center of this leaf. Now I'm using the cross peen here. I'm holding on one side. And what I'm doing is I'm hitting just to the off side of this piece. And this is how they would have raised, veins in their ironwork.
I'm going to have to try that.
So hopefully we can see. Do we see that light? See how it's raising?
That is really cool.
So now I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to work the other side of that. And this is copper, so things move very rapidly. Hence, this is the reason why I chose it.
Sure. Great for a demo piece for this.
I'll try my hardest not to get too too perfectionistic when it comes to this.
Well, it's just amazing to see. It's amazing to see this technique. Like I would have never thought that. I would have figured they would have had like a hardy tool that they put in and hammer against. Really cool.
Break that up a little bit. You see that okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. So you're not so much raising the center as lowering the 2 sides of the center for that.
Well, it's doing both. So you are technically stretching this over the stake, right?
Gotcha.
So you're recessing the sides down, but that portion that's coming up that makes the center ridge, it is effacing and elongating as you do that. So there is a stretch. There's an amount of stretch that's happening in that center range there, and they do call that raising. So that's one example. So this is very basic of how they would raise this product. And now they would change the pitch of their angles, come in. Obviously, all of this hard, rough work right now, they would rough this in, and then they would come back. They would have to come back, flip it around, and refine all this, and then planish all of this out.
Right.
So I've had people comment that before, and I would call them they're fairly known smiths, you know, and they're decent smiths in their own right. That this is not very difficult work. This isn't as difficult as some of the more modern ironwork, and I fiercely disagree.
Well, it's
Anybody that does this kind of work, I'm making it look easy and simple, but this takes a good bit of hand-eye coordination.
Yeah.
Not to monkey this all up here.
It's also like we were discussing earlier in last week, is that computational forging, you know, it's like, yes, the actual technique itself may be, when you look at it, like I look at that and go, oh, it seems so simple, you know, like it's you struggle with like kind of picturing in your head how they would do something, and then you see it done. It's like, oh, okay, that's I can do that. And then you practice it and get good at it. And it's like, but that's still just one aspect of taking all these little techniques and putting them into a full work.
Exactly. So what I'm doing here is this is like a butcher tool. This has a singular face, and this has a much narrower face. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that from being a perfect, like a round, right?
Right.
A round vein, and I'm making it stand up into a point, if you will.
Yeah.
Singular point. So that's narrowing it down. I'm still holding it in the same direction, flat direction, but when I hammer against that, there's a space that has been created by the radius there, and it's narrowing up the line.
I get it.
And so I'll do it on one side. Yep.
I see it. Now,
So,
again,
you see it tightening up?
I do. To all the viewers, obviously this is not the quality of camera work that Roy normally has on his channel. But yeah, we're running this through Discord, and I'm proud to say that, you know what, I feel it's kind of holding up pretty well. You know,
it's also really interesting. Like, I'm finding it really interesting because this is stuff I've seen theoretically, but this is like seeing actual practice and realizing the fundamentals, just how easy it is as a basic skill is amazing, and that looks great.
Yeah. So you can see this is how we would create a taper, right? So if you look at a lot of the old ironwork, it wasn't just one flat column, right? It wasn't just one flat fullered line. This actually had a taper to it. So they would have it would be thicker down here at the base, and it would taper up like a plant would all the way to the base. So obviously I could keep tinking on this and finish that out, get it to perfect. But I hope you guys can kind of see how that's formed. I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to show a different tool on this just to start giving this thing really some form, so you guys can kind of see what it looks like and copy real quick of the work that we're showing. But as you can see, those are two tools, right? Simple.
Right.
But you needed the knowledge. You needed the knowledge and the expertise and the skills to use these two very simple forms of tool to know what you needed to make to make that, right?
Right.
But the fun part about all of the fun part, and again, this gets back into what interests me so much about this work, is this is very much what interests me in this work is all of this computational forging that goes in to making something, because I started with what in the heck, how do you do that, right? And I am slowly starting to get the concept, if you will. I'm finally starting to understand how this work was made, which is such a cool experience.
And I was really wondering how you got all those different shapes onto the flat piece. without screwing up. Like I see everything at the anvil. These stake tools are just like it's opening up a new world for me.
Yeah, that's awesome. So so if you look, so I'm giving this leaf some form now by compressing the edge. We know as we bend something, the edge compresses, right? So if you work on a concave surface,
it'll spread out a little bit.
As you do that, your edge is going to compress, right? The center is going to stretch if you're working on a bowl, and the edge is going to compress. So I'm creating a scoop there.
Wow.
See the scoop?
Yep.
So I do that on the other side. And I do apologize if I'm taking too long to do this. It's about the fastest I'm working at making the fastest and roughest I'm making an acanthus since I began making them. So we're just trying to rush on through it here. Just get the concept through. So I'm just compressing that edge down on itself against the stake. As I bend it, it creates a wrinkle, and then I'm hammering out that wrinkle to compress that down into the form I'm looking for. Then we can see that's the second stage. Let's scoop that way. Now, the trick is to hammer the form in. I'll have to go to a slightly smaller ball tool for this. Switch to a different stake. As you can see how handy that notch is, these don't shift at all, do they?
Right.
Yeah, that's really clever.
I might use that in some of my other processes. Use that concept.
Feel free to do so. Now this one I'm just going to do a little bit here just so you can see the difference. Again, all this work would have had to have been planished down. I'm still using this. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Trying to hold it in a way. Can you see that bump?
Yep.
Right.
Now we're kicking back that ridge. Oh, cooperate with me. So now we're kicking back that ridge the opposite way. Again, you would rough in this form, and then you'd have to play with it,
Get finicky and really slow it down and planish it out.
Yep. But now I'm just forming this, what I need to be formed around this stake. And this is a great time while I'm doing this tink work to field any questions that you all may have while I'm working on this. I'm just going to do this one half, and then I'll call it quits there just so you guys got the good idea of it.
Right.
I think everyone's just really enamored by what you're doing there, Roy.
Right.
That's good.
Red Gum Forge, how you doing? What's up, Danimals?
So when I teach classes, it's kind of always frustrating. Sometimes when I teach classes, and I'm used to it now. It was originally frustrating to me when I taught classes, or as I teach classes still. You don't know what you don't know, so you don't know how to ask a question if you don't know you know what I mean? If you don't know the question to ask, right?
That's my.
Always after a demonstration, I'll be like, okay, well, is there any questions? And no one would ask anything, and literally 2 minutes later, what size was that again?
Yeah. Well, that's kind of my that's my whole opinion on, especially doing all this on YouTube and visual demonstrations is it's not so much, I try to teach what I can with what I know, but with any learning, it's not necessarily like when you start something fresh, you don't know the correct questions. You sound like an idiot when you don't know what to ask. But as you see something and you go, hey, that's you see the processes, and you learn a little bit more, and you can ask the right questions.
Exactly. And that's a little tough sometimes, right? It's tough. A lot of people don't want to be found, like as if they're unknowledgeable about something, right?
Yeah.
So that's another thing we fight against. But I like to encourage anybody that if you pay to take a class with someone, right? If you pay to take a class with me, you pay to take a class with Sully, you pay a class with Adam or whoever, or Yamez, or some master out there. It is your money wasted if you don't ask the question,
and
right?
get as much
You're
knowledge
there
as you
to
can
learn.
from it.
Exactly. That Smith that's teaching you has already made the assumption by you standing there in class, right, that you know less about the subject than they do. And that's not a derogative term. They're there to teach you. Otherwise, you would be the one leading the class, right?
Yeah.
So it's best to ask your questions, when you can. So
Yeah.
I'm just working on this form here real quick, and I'll call it quits. This is literally as fast as you can possibly go.
Right.
On
See, that's all why Roy has taken about 37 of my classes.
I was always taught there's a saying. There's only two types of there's no such thing as a dumb question, but I argue against that. There's only two types of dumb question. One is the one that gets getting asked repeatedly and they never learn from the answer, and two is the question that's never asked. They're the only ones that are dumb questions.
Right.
Very, very true. Excellently said.
Really?
Said.
I know, excellent. Me saying something excellent, that's rare.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer.
You said it very eloquently.
Yes, Mr. Schaefer, I have taught classes before.
Of course, Sap.
All right. I should probably call it quits, but I'll leave it in stages. That way, everybody can see the stages. There's more I could do with that. Okay, I lied. I'll do a little more, but then I promise. Quit. A little more. This is going on YouTube for thousands to see. So
it's that perfectionist. More. Oh wait, we're not on your channel unless you clip this and put some of this on your channel. We're on my channel, so maybe tens will see it. Thank you for slumming it with us.
Oh, you're very welcome. I like to come down and see how the peasant classes do it.
And hello to all the lurkers out there. I know we've got 20 some odd people in the chat, and I believe only about 10 or so chatting. So hello to all of you out there.
Lurk.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Exactly 10 people chatting right now. So.
Woo. Yeah. Well, some people just ain't got nothing to say, huh?
Yeah.
All right.
No, they're all enamored with what you're doing.
Yeah. It ain't great. It ain't pretty, but hey, we'll survive it.
That's what they say about me. So that's beautiful. That's amazing how that works out.
Start seeing some of that structure. Yeah. So get some paint on this. It might be able to show off a little bit better.
Get some of the shine off of
Rub
it.
down some
lights.
of the. Yeah, I'm kind of really unhappy about that. Again, not my normal quality.
Well, it's a quick demonstration. It's a quick. It's more of a tool demonstration than a product demonstration.
That's right.
How the tools do the work.
Exactly. That's what we're going to say. We're going to stick to that.
Yeah. No, I was looking at the technique rather than the piece itself.
Does that help
very
a little
cool. Bit? It does. It really does.
Some of the depths and valleys.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing
so
how
that's
that works.
Just a simple demonstration of some French steak represent. So again, that's where you would take that. You would go the extra mile with, you would make a bunch of those. right? Theoretically, you would be making a ton of those, and then, once you got them to that point, they would be annealed. And so, and the reason why I'm speaking from, I do want to talk about this a little bit. The reason why I'm speaking from an experiential position, right? So I am speaking from experience is because I'm actively doing this kind of work. This is my pursuit. This is kind of my study, right? And so, like an archaeologist kind of smith, right? Or forensic smith, where you would take a product, say something like out of the Mastermere finds, right? Tool chest. Rowan Taylor, he's a great YouTuber that has a whole series on that, where you would do this experimental archaeology to take and figure out how somebody would do something. Again, I don't have the materials in front of me. I don't have some old French master to learn from. And so therefore, I have to take a look at something and say, how did they do that? What techniques were, applied to that, and get as close as possible, right? In my approach, that's what I'm working towards. And so when I say stuff, this is how they would have done it. I'm speaking from a place of doing it currently, right?
Right.
And so I could never know what they did back in 1600 something, right, in France. I don't really know for sure, but I do know that is a fact of blacksmithing. If you use similar technique and you use similar process, you will have similar outcomes, period, in everything you do. So if you draw a point out, so if you had I'm going to grandstand here for a minute. If you're making fire pokers, you're making S hooks. If you draw down a taper by hand at the anvil, it's going to take you XYZ heats for yourself. It's going to take you're going to have a certain amount of force you can put into each blow, and you will have a certain outcome. If you take that same fire poker tip and you put it on a power hammer, you're going to have less heat, you're going to have heavier blows, and you're going to have a different outcome. Because if you took 8 heats to do it by hand and you put it on the power hammer and you try to do 8 heats again, you're going to beat the thing into oblivion, right? Because it can get it done in maybe 1 to 2 heats.
Yes.
So if you use similar methods and process, right? Same thing with twisting. If you twisted one bar clockwise and you want them all to be clockwise, you have to keep twisting them clockwise, right? If you took a long heat and it was orange at both ends and bright yellow in the center, if you take another heat and it's yellow at one end and orange on the other end, now you're going to get some weird you weren't for. So it's all similar. So we can use that whenever we're trying to figure out how somebody did something to imply what they would have done ultimately, because it's the same, right? It kind of, the work speaks for itself and it tells a story, and the leaf work that you see, again, the leaf work that's behind Adam there of Tiju and stuff, that would have been done with stake repose. That would not have been done in, I didn't even get to them, but I've got spring fullers and dies. I've got a lot of spring fullers and dies, like top and bottom spring fuller dies that can do work, that can do this kind of work that takes place as some of the stake repose to make the job a little quicker, but it does not yield the same result. So a lot of that work that's done, like especially in the Tiju stuff, would have been done with stake repose work.
All right.
You can say that with pretty much confidence.
Robert Lonis in the chat says, Roy was a tin knocker. Yamez, ask him if a bead roller would be good for that. I see a bead roller in my head. I think of it as a smaller version of an English wheel.
Well, it depends. So a bead roller would be great at creating fairly straight forms, right? Like, so just from like front to back. I do know of some like standing. I know of some seam rollers, bead rollers that could do like curves, right, for like pots, but they have a real hard time with reverse curves and things. And it's also a very harsh process. So I'm cajoling that material into shape versus forcing it into where it's supposed to be. And they would have done the same thing with the iron. So you could give it a try and see how it comes out. But if you're trying to replicate work that was done in the Baroque period, it wouldn't turn out as well. It would probably be way too mechanical looking.
On that note, I do know that I have seen some modern armorers. There's some armorers in Ukraine and stuff like that that do use bead rollers for doing the rolled edges on certain pieces of armor. So you know, it is useful for some things that are period like, but you know, yeah, like you were saying, to get that accurate, you've still got to do it by hand.
Yeah. In leaf work, unlike armor work, armor is very functional in nature, right? Like, so they're adding elements to this. They need structural elements, right, to bring some structure to their flat sheets of iron that they're shaping, right? Whereas we're trying to impart structure as well into the leaf work, into doing all the acanthus leaves and whatnot. But we're trying to maintain flow, right? We're trying to create an airiness of life-like, right? We're trying to indicate that this is a plant that's kind of growing on our gate, if you will, or our railing or our balcony or whatever, right? Like, so we're trying to show movement and flow and lots of it with the flourishment. So anything that's too straight or too rigid or too perfect, I'll say that, too perfect of a line ends up detracting from the overall piece.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. That kind of goes with excuse me. What I've seen people who forge like wood like structures where they'll forge branches and whatnot, and they're texturing the branches and putting knots in. You know, it's like they don't go for like perfect symmetry, because you know, with a tree, it's like the individual branches and whatnot aren't necessarily perfect symmetry. I mean, when you pull back and look at a tree as a whole, you know, with the trunk, the root system, and the branches, it does have a symmetrical look. But when you look deeper, it's not like a fractal symmetry, you know.
And that rolls off into another good point that I could probably make here about intentional texture. So on my first example that I showed, for like your tree as well, I'll come back to that here in a second, because this is on topic here. If you look here, how ugly would this look if my lines went perpendicular to the flow of the piece?
You could make it work.
Because I'm just throwing some texture into it. Right. Or how bad would this look if I just beat this up with a ball peen real quick?
Yeah, let's staple it. That'll be good enough, right?
Yeah. Just stipple it, and that'll look good, right? No, it won't. You can see here that there is an effort, right, of symmetry. And although maybe you can't see on the thing, do you see how these almost look three-dimensional, where they flow into the center element?
Yeah.
Do you see how that's a separate path than this?
Yeah.
It's not by chance. That's by design. That's by design to give the appearance, to give the appearance of this laying on top of this work here, to give the depth to the piece that this sits in the flat. So even once we form it, this is going to accentuate even more, because these are on a different arc. These are actually a tighter arc, where this is more flowing and loose of an arc. And that's what gives you this visual perception that this is different than this. And so that's done by design. That's not done by happenstance or just chance of the piece. On the onset, so even though that's done by design, I wasn't overly careful to make sure that all of these lines were perfectly evenly spaced.
Right.
Right? And if I was making 400 of these, I wouldn't care. I could care less. If all of these lines are just perfectly dead even in the center. So we're not trying to seek perfect symmetry, but we do want to have intelligent design in our work when it comes to texture. So back to your tree example, and I'll just say, this is my opinion. Everybody else can have it out all they like. Ball peen texture the heck out of it if you want, bend her up. But going back to the tree example, we know trees generally have a bark pattern, generally, not all, that go vertical, right, to show the growth of the tree, right? They go up, right? It would look confusing to our eyes to see a bunch of cross peen texture going perpendicular.
Oh, you would hate palm trees.
All the way up the, all the way up the tree. So
we also have a type of tree here in Australia which is called the ironwood tree, but its bark is like little like rectangles. So like for people that live in a traditional area like with pine and oak and ash and all that type of stuff, yeah, that vertical line makes sense. For someone like me or someone like and Yama is very similar, where you used to see in palm trees that ring texture is kind of like you look at it and go, yeah, okay, that's a tree too. I can
yeah, which is fine if that's what you're trying to go for, but it would look out of place on an oak tree, right? If you're making an old oak tree, but with palm a palm texture, people are gonna be a little confused, like, what kind of tree is it?
It would be weird. I'm with you 100%. It would be really weird to see, a tree, a deciduous tree with branches and all that stuff, with a palm tree, which is a singular shaft or singular trunk with the leaves all at the top. Like that's why it has that. It goes boom, 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 boom.
Yep.
Yeah. It's the way it's built.
It's a hybrid, damn it.
When two trees love each other.
Yeah. When a mommy tree and a daddy tree.
and technically palm trees aren't even trees, they're grass.
Right. True.
I was just wondering that. I was just wondering, but is a palm actually a tree?
Yeah.
A palm is technically a grass.
Yeah. Overgrown.
Looks
weeds.
like an overgrown weed to me.
Yeah. Yep.
But anyways, so I hope that was helpful to some people who are thinking about getting into the Baroque work. I kind of want to put it out there again that this work, it's computational forging at its best. That's a phrase I'm going to call that I'm coining. I've been saying it for a number of years now. I don't know if anybody else has ever said it across time, so correct me if I'm wrong in the chat, or I'm sure Adam's a very knowledgeable person in his research. He might be able to correct me.
No, see, yeah, computational systematic works because you're working on that like a computer or systematic. You're working from that A, B, C. As long as you keep doing those basic tasks, like a computer, like a system, like a machine, you're going to get to the end result. No matter, it doesn't matter how good you are at it. As soon as you keep doing those basic formulas and keep going forward, you're going to end up in that end result. That picture behind me is, like you said, just simple steps followed one by one with a plan to end up at that. It looks complex.
Ones and zeros.
Yep, it looks complex when it's put together, but if its individual elements are relatively simple.
Yep. Yes. True. So so I'd like to encourage anybody, if you want to get into leaf work, and because you got to go that way first if you want to get into Baroque work, especially French Baroque ironwork, is to start with something simple. You've probably already started with something simple, a basic leaf form, right? Forged out on the end of the bar. They didn't just make leaves for no reason back in the day, right? On the end of the bar. They came up with various forms from just forging a leaf on the end of a bar and adding those leaves to something, bigger and grander and greater until you get this, maybe a massive oak tree someday. But I'd like to encourage you all out there to give it a shot. Get yourself some plate, get yourself some thin gauge material, anywhere from about 14 gauge material to 18 gauge material is standard of what they would have worked in. Anything heavier than that, when you start getting into like the 12 gauge and 10 gauges and 8 gauge plate, that would have been considered heavy work, right? That would have been considered a heavy form that they'd be working on, and that would be all done with forging. But go get yourself some sheet tin, cut out some forms, and start practicing. Lock you a little fuller or a dull chisel in the vise and start hammering on it and seeing what type of forms you can create with that, and just experiment a little bit. And you may find that you love Baroque work too.
or if you're
there is a massive field of study. Go ahead.
Or if you're lazy and don't want to cut out your own, you can always go to blacksmithspdfs.com and blacksmithsblanks.com and christcentedironworks.com and browse around there for the Roy special cut awesome sauce blanks.
Wink.
Yeah, and if you if you have a special design that you don't see on their website, flick them an email, talk to Jess and Roy, and they can actually do you up a plan and a price list for you to get your own custom blanks cut out, because they will do that for you, and they can organise shipping for you and everything from their end too. So don't forget to check out blacksmithblanks.com, blacksmithpdx.com, and christcentedironworks.com.
Yes.
Very true. Thank you for the shameless plugs. Checks are in the mail.
we got to get you to come back somehow, Roy. You're our most famous link, so and we love you as well.
Okay. Bill Wheel said I missed a question. What kind of bick or stake anvil did Roy use in his demonstration? Stake anvil or stake. What are they called? Please go into those tools again. The stake tools again.
So they are French repousse stakes, and they are various in form. You can make them however they are. If you want to think about them, they're like fullers and chisels, and ball-end fullers and things like that, held upright. So they're stakes. They're various forms of forming stakes. The ones I used in particular were 4 different types. I used one that had a 3/8 inch fuller that locks in the vise. So these are vise held tools. I used a butcher. A butcher is anything that has a singular edge in one plane. So you have one plane and a singular edge. So I used a butcher fuller right here. It's dull on the end, so it's about 1/8 inch across the top there. That's a stake. I used a large, broad ball stake or a mushroom stake. So this is a mushroom stake. This is a ball stake. A little bit different. This one's used for more planishing work or broader faces. And this was all made out of 5160, non-hardened, non-heat treated 5160. And then you can see I used a ball stake. I used a small ball, and that's roughly about a 5/8 inch ball stake on the end there. To take and form this little small fleur-de-lis element for a canvas leaf topper. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yes, very much so. For those who just popped in and missed the actual demonstration, I highly recommend rewatching this video. About midway in it, Roy did a fantastic demonstration of how to use those tools, and I will definitely put those on my list of tools that I want to make, but probably will never get around to. Because y'all know my list, Oh, Alexis, you're probably going to get those things made this weekend. I know you.
Yeah, no.
But
I think having that little kick to lock it into the vise is like you, Roy. I've seen it somewhere before, but seeing it in action is really, it's like, yeah, because I mean, there's always times where we're trying to lock something into the vise and work like that, and it just keeps slipping down, and you get endlessly frustrated. you know, and
no
so
matter how hard, no matter how hard you lean on the vise, it still slips.
Yep, or turns.
Yep.
Or turns in the vise, and that's even worse. You're working on something that turns on you, like So having that little kick is a funnily enough, back in the magazines and stuff, they used to call those little tricks kinks, workshop kinks.
Oh, really?
I've got several of those.
Oh, kinky.
Yeah. Yep.
But,
So that was workshop kinks. So that's a workshop kink from Roy.
Yeah,
that's a pretty good one too. I can't believe like none of us have really ever thought of that before. I mean,
don't Google search that one.
Don't Google that. Yeah. You'll come across some strange things, but not the things you want.
So with that was a very fantastic demonstration and showcase of some of the stuff that can be done with those. I would like to move this into our final thoughts, if we could.
sure.
So if anybody, of the panel of co-hosts and guests would like to share any final thoughts on the show, a topic or life, here's your chance.
Yeah, I'll go first. This is a fascinating demonstration and a very informative look into how the French Baroque went together, and the assembly part I especially found fascinating, just because same thing, you kind of wonder how it all goes together, and it makes a lot of sense the way Roy described it. So I really appreciate that. For everybody else, if you get a chance this week and the weather's not too hot, get out to your workshop, put on your safety glasses, be creative. Heck, if you want, even like I said, get on the computer and head over there and get you some blanks from Roy, and try to work them out or see what kind of different things you could do with them. Other than that, be kind to your fellow humans, and if you can't be good at it. See you next week.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, I'll go next, and then I'll come. I'll do our outro while I'm at it. And then we can finish up with Roy and Yames. So my final thoughts is, it's always interesting to see or to watch someone who's got a passion for something do that thing. It's because at the end of the day, you see, I get so much more information about seeing someone light up, and I do it, and I bore the heck out of people when they start me on the blacksmithing route, and I just la about them. So so watching Roy talk about and do a little bit of Baroque, leaf work and stuff like that, and you see to see you light up is really cool. But it also shows, we look at something complex like the Tshirts screen or any other of the thousands of examples of Baroque ironwork out there, even those in the US, because you got to remember places like New Orleans or anywhere that had a very strong French background, particularly during the early settlement of the US, will have a lot of at least Baroque inspired ironwork. But so you might have the opportunity, depending on where you are in the world, to actually have a look. But watching those operations take place really reinforces something so complex as that is something so simple to start, and I think a lot of people fail to start because they look at something and go, wow, that is super complex, when really it's just the sum of its parts. So thank you. Like I said, I'll quickly do our AJ. Thank you for joining us all on the Impractical Blacksmith podcast. And thank you very much, Roy, for joining us as a special guest. You can find Yames on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at Island Metal Forge. You can find Alexis at Transcendental Artist Studios on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. And you can find me, Adam, at Speargrass Forge on YouTube, Instagram, and Facebook. Don't forget, and of course, you can find Roy at Christ-Centered Ironworks. Don't forget to check out his website, christcentedironworks.com. Also, blacksmithingpdfs.com and the last one was blacksmithingblanks.com, I believe. Yep, okay, I got that one right. Don't forget, if you have any suggestions for Tool of the Week, Metal of the Week, or any other topic, including our last couple of months coming up, except in September, of course, because of Quad State. You can that includes history or something you want to cover with, of course, blacksmithing. You can leave that under hashtag middle of the week in the YouTube community chat on Discord, or you can email us at impracticalblacksmiths@gmail.com. If you have found us on Spotify, Amazon Music, or Google Podcasts, we generally upload every Wednesday, or you can join us live every Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and that's currently 11:30 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, but check that against your local time, and that's the Art of Metal Forge YouTube channel. Finally, thanks for joining us. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and if you're listening to the podcast, don't forget to give us a star rating. We really do appreciate your support, and share it with your friends. I know this week I actually shared it with a guy that was looking for podcasts to listen to, and he goes, "Oh, you're a podcaster. What's your podcast?" And I'll give it a listen to, because we all drive around, and commercial radio can be a bit repetitive sometimes. So listening to people that you that can expand your mind is currently quite a good thing. So don't forget to share it with your friends. And with that, I hand it back over to you, Roy and Yames, to finish us out and send us off.
Go ahead, Roy.
Right on. Woo! Brother, that's a mouthful and a half.
They're asking why you have sunburn. No, he's just out of breath.
Yep, no, I have a script.
Breathe.
I have a script.
Breathe. See, I'd have so many ums in there. I could never do that fast. I don't know. If blacksmithing doesn't work out for you, auctioneer. May I suggest auctioneer? Probably handle it. So, So for my final thoughts, first off, I'd like to say thank you all for having me on. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to take and just share a bit about what I love with the blacksmithing community. So thank you very much for that. Thank you, Yames. Thank you, Alexis. Thank you, Adam, for again putting on the show and keeping me in check, making sure I stay between the lines. I need that from time to time. The thing to the viewers that I would like to suggest is, don't, as that's been previously discussed, don't let the enormity of the work kind of turn you off from doing it, or worse yet, making up your mind about it as it's not that difficult, or that's we don't do that kind of work. We're superior or far above it. Explore it some, and you might just find yourself going down the rabbit hole like I have done in it. And there is a whole wide world of blacksmithing. Baroque ironwork, French Baroque ironwork is not the end all be all of everything. It is for me, but yours may be something else, and that's okay too. Just get out there, get to forging, and as long as you're moving forward, you can't do better than that. So that's it. God bless everyone. Thank you so much for having me on. And we'll catch you next time.
Yeah, man. And for me, my usual, I like to show a huge amount of appreciation to everybody in the chat and everybody who helps make this Sunday show go smoothly and fun and worth every minute we do. I know we went double long today, but we kind of had to. It was a strong topic with a strong panel. So a big thank you to the.
Sorry.
It's all right. It was planned. Big thank you to the those in the chat, that are chatting and keeping us entertained while we're doing this. To the chat moderators and admins, and to the chat or channel members, and those who send super chats and help support what we do. It's hugely appreciated. And as always, a huge thank you to my co-hosts, Adam and Alexis, and a big thank you to Roy for coming on the show and showing us a bit of his world there. And it's always fun. So with that, I think we're going to go ahead and end it and kind of hang out in the after show for a little bit, and hammer out some plans for next week. So I apologize again at the end. I mentioned this more towards the beginning. For some reason, my internet has kind of got a pulse in it, so there's some spots where it may be a little iffy, but all in all, I think it was a great show. Hello, Clara, and hello to all of you who popped in and didn't say anything. So Anyway, we're going to go ahead and call that a show. Thank you all, and goodbye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.